Welcome, everyone. Today's going to be a little bit different. As always, it's Sam today, and I'm going to be hosting Al on Talking Swish. So we're going to switch it. We're switching up roles, switching up seats. It's going to be a first of a multi-part series. Today we're going to be covering the inception of basketball and how Al came into his life, and vice versa. What's going on, Al? How we doing today?
Man, Gucci, man. Good to see you, brother, man.
Of course.
Just put my daughter down, baby girl down. So I'm tapped in for a minute. And
Good,
it's
man.
always a pleasure to talk hoops with you, my boy. So
Absolutely.
looking forward to sharing my upbringing for our audience and our crowd and just kind of giving some insight into my story and how I arrived here.
Of course.
Yeah.
We've touched on it before in other episodes, just in terms of how you took to the sport so early. So what is your earliest basketball memory that you can think
it's
of?
Crazy. It's crazy because I've asked so many people now, you would think I would like have it dialed, but I believe my earliest memory is age 4, literally in front of the TV screen, watching a Chicago Bulls game, watching Michael Jordan play.
Really?
Yeah, man. That's the earliest I can dial it back. Like, I'm not sure. I'm assuming I was 4 because when I've talked about this with my old man, he told me that I was age 4. But I really distinctly remember like being glued to the old school TV with the knob channel changer. Yeah. And I don't even remember the game so much as like remember being in awe of like one person was just clearly better than everyone else. And I'm pretty sure shortly after that, it was trying to mimic that around the house, right? So like, tongue out, shooting on a little mini hoop, like grabbing your shorts when you bend over like he did when he was tired or whatever. It was early on, just like, hey, that dude looks special and I want to be like him.
So, be like Mike. That was really the thing.
One of the greatest slogans ever because it was accurate. Everybody would be like Mike. Yeah.
You said, that's funny you say that, like just doing stuff around the house. I distinctly remember at my parents' house, we had like a white border that was like into every door frame. And, Matt and I, every time we went there, we just jump up and slapped it. And it's just gray by the time we were 12. We could still go over to the house and it's all gray.
Just fingerprint at the top of the board.
Yeah. You talk about
what I used to do too was, years later after 4, but I used to, when we moved to the Bay, and I could finally reach high enough, I would take wire clothing hangers and you take them. So, you got the hook at the top, you take it and you kind of make it a square. And then the rest of the hanger that's like this, I would bend it into a circle. And so you could fasten the hook with the circle wire exposed in the doorway, close the door. And I would shoot my socks and hoop with my socks into the little wire frame of my door. So the doors at all our house got little like wire scratches on the top. In between it and the board.
That's funny. It's like the little hoop I got over here.
Yeah.
Except not.
So way more grimy.
You talked about Pops being kind of the influence towards, exposing you to basketball. Was he much of a basketball player or athlete at all?
Not a player, not an athlete. My Pops was really, really bright, really intelligent. So he kind of leaned into that. He earned academic scholarships in order to go to school. And he was just a super, super intelligent, smart brother from South Side of Chicago. And what that did do, though, he definitely was a Chicago Bulls fan. And obviously, when I was born and when my brother were around, 86 for me, 84 for my brother, that was the time period to be a Bulls fan. It was like there was nothing better. So he was reveling in his team being dominant and having the greatest player of all time play for it. And so we didn't miss too many games and they were on TV nationally televised, etc. So, he was hooked, we were hooked, and it was a good time to be a Bulls fan. So he exposed me through the game in that way through his passion for the best team. Right. And then it kind of has gone on from there. Obviously now he's been in California for longer than he lived in Illinois. He's a diehard Golden State Warriors fan. He's at almost every home game and doesn't miss a game very often.
Doesn't miss a game.
So, he has the passion for the game, even though he didn't play. And the funny thing is my Pops is 6'6", athletic, worked out every day of his life before work for I don't know how many decades, and is constantly often mistaken for an athlete and for a pro athlete. So I think sometimes it used to annoy him, like, not every tall brother is a hooper. And then he
Right.
had a son that was a tall brother who hoops. So, so I think he's good with it, man.
Yeah. Now, yeah, he can claim it now,
Yeah, now
from
he
my
can play it
genes.
with some pride, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, what was your first organized sport?
It was hoop for sure. So I have an older brother. He's almost 2 years older than me, exactly. And so he was playing in organized leagues before I was even of the age where I was allowed to. But
Mhm.
I was attending practice. You know what I mean? I'm shooting on the side when he's playing for teams. So it was like a countdown. I was literally just waiting for the moment that I could play.
Right.
And we were so fascinated with hoop that I'm pretty sure what happened was like if the starting age was 5 or 6, I think the starting age was 6 and I was 5. And my pops went to, one of the teams where my brother's coaches was just like, look, man, he's better than everybody. You should like go play. Somehow things got moved and I got to play even a year early and enjoyed it
Okay.
too. So
Was it
I've been in organized
tr-
league as far as I can remember.
what was the league? Do you remember?
I'm pretty sure the first league was up in Santa Rosa. So we lived briefly in Sonoma County before moving to the East Bay. So it was a league up there. I don't even remember the name of it or how it was organized. It might have been
Mhm.
through our church. I went to a Baptist church up there. But then when we moved to Alameda, I was playing AYB, Alameda Youth Basketball, which is our city league. And, I never missed it. I played every single year from 6 years old when we moved to the Bay to high school.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When did you first realize you were good at basketball?
That's a good question. Like, yeah, see, I don't know that I really realized I was good as much as I realized I took it more seriously than everybody.
Oh,
So, like, I was again when I was younger, I played up, so I wasn't the biggest and fastest. So it wasn't like I'm like, oh, I'm dominant. But it was pretty apparent that I was watching more basketball than most of the people around me. I'm mimicking more of Jordan's moves, right? Like I'm
right.
literally doing stuff that I've been seeing on TV. And when I lost, I would be hot for like the whole week and the whole day and like can't talk to nobody one on one. I'd be ecstatic. So it was just from literally from the first time I ever played, I felt like I was taking it more seriously than everyone around me and it meant more to me. And
Mhm.
then slowly, I think that naturally transitioned to like I'm playing a little bit better because I'm just so into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to throw temper tantrums like 5, 6 years old, losing games. I would just be crying, throwing
Yep.
throwing everything I could.
I'm glad to hear
Um,
that, man. It makes me
yeah,
feel better because I was out of control. I like
out
pops
of
threatened to
control.
like not let me play a few times. Like if this is how
Yeah.
you gonna behave, you can't. I mean, like furious. Every loss was like losing in the finals to me. Like, wouldn't
Yeah.
talk to anybody the rest of the day, pouting at the dinner table, man.
Yeah.
Tears on a big loss. Like, but it just meant that it meant a lot to us. I think in hindsight.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean,
As a young kid, like nothing. You don't really care about anything. Like at least I care.
right,
At
exactly,
least I'm mad
exactly.
enough to care
And
about something.
it means that I'm mad that like no one else is this upset.
Right.
And that actually stuck with me a long time. I was probably still that way up through college where like a loss hit me real hard, whereas everybody else seemed to be chilling. So,
Yeah.
there was some good that came out of taking it that seriously, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. You talk about your older brother. I know Aunt, but 2 years is a pretty significant age gap when you're competing every day.
Yeah.
How did that kind of foster the competitive drive in you?
Yeah, man. We've discussed this a lot, you and me. And so it's crazy. Like I think 2 years is the perfect amount of time for the younger sibling to just benefit tremendously. And what I
Mm,
mean is like you're close enough in age to where it makes sense for you to get to play with your older brother and his peers. It's like, you know, oftentimes they need one more. You're kind of close enough to hang with each other for a day and like be doing the same things. And so that was definitely the case with me. I think it annoyed my brother too a bit, but I was always around kids that were
yeah.
2 years older than me, always, and especially on the hoop court. And so that was one thing, was getting exposed to like bigger and better defenders all the time. And then the ones, me versus my brother all the time, was like a daily occurrence. So imagine every single day playing against somebody that's bigger, faster, and stronger than you
Yeah.
every day for 15 years, 14 years, whatever. That's too much. So age 5, 6 to so for like 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And bro, that did wonders. That did tremendous wonders, I think. And I, when I was even younger and smaller, I was so good at like scoop layups or like throwing it up to the rims really quickly before somebody bigger could gather and
Hmm.
jump and block a shot. Um, and also like putting up with more physicality. Just like obviously when I started to get really good, him and his friends would try to just use the size and throw bows
Yeah.
in the air and throw me around. And so, I got pretty good at like getting hit and still trying to get the ball to the rim and things like that.
Right.
And then there's just a competitive nature too, man. Like you just hate losing to your brother, dude. Like I would rather lose to anybody on earth than my own brother. So, imagine playing that hard, bro. Like
Yeah.
it's just like I'm trying to not get talked about at dinner tonight. Like I'm gonna play some the level
That's
of competition was fierce. Like I'm
yeah.
I'm here to win. I'm not here to dilly-dally and mess around.
Yeah. And that's all you have for you right in that moment, right? Is
Yeah,
to win this game. And
that's
so
it.
like you're going all out.
That's it.
I mean, I know you guys competed in basketball, obviously, but what are the other stuff? I mean, I know did you guys, I mean, you were into wrestling, I'm sure. Like everything becomes a competition when you're like you got two boys in the house. And I lost in basketball, but I'm gonna sneak you and tackle you on the couch or something like that.
Well, you know what happened when we were younger is my brother got really into video games,
Mm.
whereas and he was really good. He would smack me in every game, Mario Kart, Hoop, Tekken, what Mortal Kombat, whatever. Anything we played, he was crushing me. So my get back was kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna let him
Let's go
have this
outside
video
then.
game, bro. Yeah, like let me do all the outside sports gonna be me. So we fought a lot. We were watching WWE wrestling and WWF when we were kids. He was super into that. So we were in there practicing wrestling moves on each other. Hoop was the main game always. We were into baseball when we were younger as well. We never got into football much. I think our parents tried to steer us away from it just after, especially like seeing, the injuries that could occur out there. They weren't big on that for us. Um, we played tennis for a second, but I was never into it. My brother was like into it and he was really good. And then, I just would get dragged along to practice and have to go because like my parents didn't want to drop us off at two different places.
Yeah.
So we did that for a minute. And a lot of people said like, oh, this will help your footwork skills on the court. But by the time they tried to get me into it, I was already so hoop. I was like, yeah, I'm off this. And there weren't that many like black tennis players to like look up to and idolize. I was kind of like, this is not my sport. So that faded fast. But man, more than anything, it was almost always hoop.
Yeah.
Almost always. Yeah, bro. It just had a special place in my heart from day one.
Do you remember the age you first beat him?
I don't really, man. I do remember like being hyped, like it would be like a rare occurrence, like of every 10 games I'd win one.
Mm.
Then all of a sudden it'd be like every 10 games I win three. Then
Mm.
all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, it's 50-50. Like anybody could win. It's who's on that day.
Right.
And that's when he kind of stopped playing me as much because then it started to fade to like, oh yeah, this dude's about to, about to work me. So,
Yeah.
but it was junior high school for sure. So let's say,
Okay.
between 10 and 13,
Yeah.
man. And also like I started to notice how his peers would react to me playing. Like there would be guys that were really, really good eighth graders around Alameda and Oakland. And I respected them. They were talented kids. And I would like, if we were playing twos, like I would have my way a little bit on the court or maybe be the best player that day on the court. And I could tell by them because my older brother wouldn't be like, oh, Al can hoop a little bit. He's trying to still beat me. But then
Right.
we're playing twos, like one of his boys might be like, yo, your brother's nice and stuff like that. And I would hear it and be like, okay, I'm getting somewhere. I'm getting
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was between 10 and 13, I think I really started to turn a corner. And I think finally I was big enough to like play against the guys bigger than me well. And had the confidence and the skill to like maybe even turn the corner a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said right around 13. We're still in middle school then. How
Yeah.
tall? Do you remember how tall you were in middle school?
Yeah, so eighth grade year, I think I was 6'1", 6'1", 6'2",
Okay.
because right as I got to high school, I entered high school at 6'2", and then by like sophomore year, end of sophomore year, I was 6'5", and was pretty much like 6'5" for my entire high school career. When I graduated and got to college, I measured out at like a shade under 6'6", where I'm at today. So there
Okay.
was a big growth spurt, like age 13.
Do you remember like so talk about your eighth grade experience? Obviously, you were probably a lot taller than everybody. Do you remember? Are you still friends with people you played with?
Yeah,
What kind of numbers were you putting up? Like, how
yeah.
did you work on your skill at this point? Did you have a particular, influence in your life in terms of like a coach or a mentor that walked you through these? Take me back to eighth grade.
Okay, yeah, tons of good questions in there. So let's break it down. One big thing that started happening was seventh grade. I think it was seventh grade. I started playing AAU.
Mm,
So like fifth, sixth grade, I started playing in Oakland all the time. There was a team called, no, it wasn't even that. We played in like the Oakland PAL League, Police Activities League.
the PAL,
So sorry.
PAL.
Yeah. We call it Oakland PAL. And so we jumped in the league, and that's when I started hooping with like all kids from Oakland, all from the town. I met Quentin Thomas, who went on to play at North Carolina years later. I met Tim Pierce, who went on to play at Arizona State years later. And just a lot of really talented cats that were coming from Oakland, all of them bigger, stronger, better than me at the game. So there was a real sharp point where I was playing well in AYB, beating up on kids in Alameda, kind of making a name for myself, and then entered Oakland and was like another level. And
Mm,
that was around, sixth grade, so early junior high. So I had a summer of just like a rude awakening, like, oh man, I'm not that nice. I thought I was, but I'm not that nice. And that made me kind of double down on practicing and working on my game a little bit and playing more often. And then seventh, eighth grade year, I went and played with the Oakland Rebels out of Bushrod Rec on 59th and Telegraph, North Oakland. And this is where, we really started coming to my own. Started playing with Jamil Butler, who was a fantastic guard. Quinn was on that team as well. Eric Flato, who's been on the show, went on to play at Yale, was on that team. At times, Antonio Kellogg, who went on to play at UConn, was on that team with us. Justin Argonal, who went on to play at Chico, was with us on that team. Theo Robertson played at University of San Diego. I mean, just a ridiculously talented team. Almost everybody was D1, top to bottom.
yeah.
And so, I was on a really good team and was not the go-to guy. And I think that made me really start to figure out, hey, I actually have to work harder than cats in order to get my shot, and started to kind of really double down on work ethic and training and this and that. And then you asked about how I was working out. I remember up until that point, it was really just like playing a bunch. Like, let me just
Hmm.
play all the time against anybody that'll play against me. Let me go in the driveway and try to copy moves that I've seen on TV. And right about this time, I started really learning about drill work, like how to do drills, shooting drills, ball handling drills. And I remember a really big thing was like one of the coaches on the Rebels talked to me about being able to get up and down the court at the same speed, whether I had the ball in my hand or not. So could I be as fast, in a transition with the dribble as I was just running and sprinting? So I used to work on that a lot, like literally just like time sprints, but dribbling the ball.
Hmm.
And I remember it paying off like a few games later, him saying, man, I know you've been working on it because it looks way better. And so kind of having the idea like, oh man, things I work on in my own time will make me a better player at game time. So
Right.
that was a really important part for me, was starting to understand like, yo, it's about work ethic and putting that time in. If you want to get better, not just hooping every chance you can get.
I gotcha. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, that was something.
Um, how about so you played for your eighth grade team? Were
Yeah,
you a two guard, point guard, the
yeah.
center? You were
I
six
was
one. You
a
were eighth grade. You're probably the center.
No, not even though. So I mean, on the AAU team, we had some hitters. So like
Yeah.
everybody was pretty big. At my junior high at St. Joe's, I was like the tallest dude on the team.
Yeah.
But in this AAU team, I was playing guard all the time. And then when we played out on the yard, I was also playing guard all the time because I'm mimicking Jordan. I'm doing
Right.
only guard moves and stuff like that when I work my game. So I had been playing guard just because even though I was taller, I had the ability to get up and down the court, to make moves, to actually break presses and stuff. So I did get to play a lot of guard. And then, the big growth spurt happened like ninth grade. So at this point, I'm already AAU. I'm playing, for my school team, I'm playing, and I'm used to playing guard. Now all of a sudden, like, add 3 more inches. So even though I was one of the tallest guys in school, especially my last couple of years, it was pretty apparent that I was a guard and I had guard skills, and just my game translated to playing guard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did get that opportunity. I remember my first 2 years in high school, I played freshman in JV. And a lot of people don't know that. They think I jumped right on the varsity, but I actually played freshman my first year and JV my second year. And on those 2 teams, the coach at the time was trying to make me a big man and play big man. And I think at some point I was just like, this is ridiculous, man. I was clearly a guard and could perform better than the other guards on the team. I think I got into a lot of trouble by just like, well, I'm just going to grab every rebound and then bring it up type of situation,
Right.
instead of like outletting it to a guard and never touching it. And I'm so glad I stuck to my guns on that, because it might have made a couple of like freshmen and JV coaches unhappy, but it made college coaches very happy. So
Yeah.
I'm really
So
happy.
we transitioned into high school. Was St. Joe's always going to be your school? Always.
Yeah, there was a minute I really, really wanted to go to Oakland Tech,
Mm.
because I had been spending more time at Bushrod and hooping at Bushrod more than I hooped in Alameda and around my house. So most of the guys on that Oakland Rebels team were going to Oakland Tech, and that's the North Oakland Public School.
Was that Leon Post team?
Yeah, so at the time, Oakland Tech was ridiculous. They had Leon Poe, who went to the league. They had that guy Theo, who went to San Diego. Derek Bruce was just king of Oakland. Q went to North Carolina. Armando Surratt, who went to Miami and then transferred to USF. I mean, they were ridiculous. And Kenneth Smith, who went to Eastern Washington. His name is Deuce. I don't know if you want me throwing his nickname. And
they were nationally ranked too.
Sorry?
They were nationally ranked too.
Yeah, so they went to state back to back. My junior and senior year, 03 and 04 for Division I. They lost to Westchester both years, but they were nice. They were beating up on the OAL league, the Oakland Public League, which was a really good league.
Right.
So, I wanted to be a part of that franchise, and these were my closest friends, so I wanted to play with them. But my brother was already attending St. Joseph Notre Dame. It was close to the crib. I was already at St. Joe's Elementary, the junior high school. So it was just kind of like easy for my parents. They were like, yo, you got to go to Joe's. Mm-hmm. And I was happy about that too, because St. Joe's is a basketball school. A lot of prodigies came out of there. Jason Kidd, Calvin Bird, Ray Young, Renee Jacques, Nate Morasset, like just a lot of talented players, Kevin Butler. So it was a hoop school, and at that time, really well respected and well known. So I was hyped to be a part of that program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Almost made the Tech team. Almost.
And who's to say what would have came of it, man? I think if I would have been at Tech, I would have been a third string guard almost the entire time. Second string, maybe my
probably not third string, but
well, let's say as a freshman at least.
Yeah.
You got Armando at point guard going to Miami. You got Deuce going to the best JUCO and then one of the best JUCOs in the nation, and then E-Dub. You had Q going to North Carolina. So the team was just stacked. Leon. Yeah. So, there weren't a lot of shots left for the young skinny kid from across the bridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it worked out for the best.
You played freshman ball. I didn't think I knew that. I didn't know you played freshman ball. Like, so there's a freshman. Can you break down St. Joe's? It's a pretty small school.
Yeah.
You got a ton of basketball history there, but also like they have enough players for 3 teams.
Yeah, St. Joe's was 1991, 1992 Division I state champs with Jason Kidd leading the way. I think in the school's history, 3 or 4 McDonald's All-Americans. 97, 98, went to the Division I state championship led by Ray Young, lost both years. And, you know, at least around the time I was there, basketball prodigy school. And the school had between like 500 and 600 students total max, no football team. So, but, you know, really well respected, nationally respected basketball team. And so a lot of guys came there to hoop. A lot of guys from Oakland, from Alameda, from San Leandro, from
Right.
Berkeley. They were all making that commute to hoop and to get a really good education.
Of course.
So what I will say is that I think that the coaching staff at the time, I never felt this way, but maybe they had got the impression of me as being a little bit overconfident because I got to play on that Rebels team and we were also nationally known. And I think they tried to humble me by making me play freshman.
Hmm.
And I remember my brother like being upset for me, like, man, you're better than me and some of the guys on varsity or you know, like on the older teams.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go down there and pay my dues. And I'm pretty sure, I don't remember numbers wise, but I'm pretty sure freshman year I was close to like 30 a game. It was like really, really child's play, 25 to 30. It was just like boring, honestly. And then JV that next year
Wait,
was kind of a shock. Like I was just like,
the
you know,
physicality? What was the shock?
no, it was a shock that I wasn't on varsity.
Oh,
I think I played, and we just had a stacked squad. I think there was, you know, we had a really good team. A lot of people that also had paid their dues before they got to be seniors, and this is their senior year. And so, you know, the coach is like almost indebted to them and this and that. But I remember playing in a couple of the pickup games that summer with like varsity players. I think I made one kid fall with a nice move. I remember like being able to do the moves that I like to do. And I remember a lot of people, my fellow classmates being like a little bit upset for me that I wasn't on that team. So maybe that was necessary because it gave me the chip on my shoulder that I needed.
right.
But yeah, man, I didn't play varsity until I was a junior in high school.
Okay. Freshman year, 30 ball. How did JV go? Same thing?
Yeah, saying, I mean, I don't remember my numbers. I don't even know that they were taking like official stats for freshmen and JV kids, but
Yeah.
you know, again, just I was the best player on the court every time we played. Maybe there was like one kid. I remember playing against like Berkeley High, and they had Keon Tate my freshman year, and I think Berkeley had a rule that no all freshmen had to play freshmen. So then he went to varsity afterwards, but he was a superstar. Like he was extremely athletic kid
Yeah.
from Oakland, Berkeley area. So I remember like that JV year being like frustrated that I wasn't playing varsity.
Yeah.
That's my main memory. I don't really remember if we won a lot of games. There wasn't playoffs for freshmen and JV.
Hmm.
So you're just playing these games and just kind of like, you know, the whole goal, everybody wants to be on VAR. And so I remember being frustrated that I wasn't on there, but I also remember just like still playing summer ball, AAU ball with the Oakland Rebels against Division I nationally recruited kids and playing pretty well. So I
Right.
felt still really confident, even though I didn't feel like I was getting my fair shake.
Was there ever a conversation between you and the coaching staff in terms of we're bringing you along slowly, or we need to see this from you before we pull you up?
Yeah, I mean, you know, at this time, Gordy Johnson was the varsity coach over at St. Joe's, and he had been there when Jake Kidd was there. He coached Ray Young, so he was just like, you know, really well respected, and there was a very much like a authoritarian like leadership. It was like, look, you know, this is how it's done with staff, and that's that. And you know, I think maybe he thought I was cocky and wanted to just make sure I was humble too, which is
Hmm.
very possible. But
I don't mean to interject, but Gordy Johnson was my college basketball coach.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. I do know that. Over at UC
Yeah.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Another tie, yet another strange tie between us.
Yeah.
You know, I never really like. It wasn't like at St. Joe's at that time. It was pretty well oiled machine and like
Hmm.
a kind of like, you know, a hierarchy in place. You
Right.
weren't really walking into coach's office as like a sophomore in high school. Like I should be playing. Like that didn't really happen. So
Right.
I think I voiced my, myself. I made it obvious that I wanted to be playing varsity. For whatever reason, it didn't happen, and that was that. You know what I mean? Um, so
Okay.
there wasn't much like conversation around the exact reasons why.
Right.
Yeah, but we
And
did
then
have a
junior year.
star-studded. We had a varsity squad that had like maybe like 15 people on it. So I think
Yeah.
it wasn't like it wasn't glaring to everybody at the time that like Al really needs to be here. It was glaring to the people that saw the behind the scenes work going on, you know?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, we go into junior year. Is Gordy still there?
Going into junior year, Gordy leaves.
That's right.
So his assistant, Maurice Horton, became the head coach for that 1 year. And I loved him. He was awesome. And so I got to play for him. And there was a real big like changing of the guard that year too. So I went from like not being on varsity to starting by the time preseason hit.
Right.
And you know, I maybe this was the completion of my growth spurt, but I remember like the bounce came and some of these other athletic features, but I was catching alley oops. I was dunking everything. There was no such thing as a layup if I got into the paint. Jump shot was coming around, you know, the moves were good. Just got like zero point 0.2 pounds of muscle on me because I was a stick and bones prior to that. Everything was starting to click. And so even these guys that were ahead of me, seniors that had, you know, kind of waited their turn to be the big dogs on campus, I was like going at them in morning
Right.
workouts and practice, going at them like zero. I don't want to say zero respect. I respected these guys a ton, but you know, I was making it clear that like I had waited my turn and I had waited long enough.
Right.
And the general reaction I was starting to feel on the team was like, yeah, you're right. Because it wasn't too much like objection to me kind of trying
Mhm.
to take the reins a little bit.
Yeah.
So by junior year, it was pretty apparent. And I remember even in the games, having a lot of big games as a junior and feeling like, okay, cool. Yeah. You know, better late than never. And now I'm gonna make up for lost time.
Where do you think your game developed in between like freshman and junior year? Besides like putting on a little bit of weight, besides putting on a little bit more size and height and hitting your growth spurt?
Yeah, I think for sure it was like playing with those guys at Bushrod. It was
Mm.
just playing against like literally the best players, the best talent in Oakland was hands down. I mean, this class was so ridiculous, right? Like from that area, we had so many D1s and just absurd. We on another episode, we looked at that high school kind of all area chart for my class, and there were some big names on there. I was playing against all those guys, but working out against guys like Q, who should have been a McDonald's All-American and was North Carolina's point guard, every day, like going against them every single day, all summer long. It was just catapulting my skill.
Right.
At this time, too, it was, I want to say around sophomore year when I started to go over to Piedmont High School, work out with Brian Gardier, who was training Eric Flato. He's the coach, longtime coach of the women's program there, multiple state championships. And he was putting me through real skill work, guard work, drills, just kind of preparing me like to train like a college athlete or a pro, even cones out. Every drill had a purpose. You know, breaking down fundamentals, using screens off ball, getting right into a jump shot, squaring up. He was teaching me to really play basketball.
So
Um,
before BG, most of your experience came by like just playing more and
yeah,
exposing more.
yeah,
But when like around the same time, sophomore to junior year, you got introduced to like true skill work.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And I think starting to understand, you know, it's a different thing to work out and improve your game and work out and get better than it
Mhm.
is to hoop, right? And just
Right.
play and hoop. And for most kids, playing and hooping is the fun part. And it was for me too. I wanted to hoop all the time in just a pickup game. But, you know, locking yourself in the gym when no one else is in there, shooting on a shooting machine, shooting a, you know, 2, 3, 400 catching shots, catching shoots, and just trying to get your form down. That's where a lot of real development happens. And I think I was slowly starting to understand the difference between the two and how important the latter was.
When do you think that clicked for you in terms of skill work translating into games and like putting the direction and focus into the skills?
It was kind of like moment. It wasn't like a, you know, oh, I got it now. It was, you know, working on your shot and then all of a sudden having a game where you shoot 100% from three.
Mm.
Or it was, you know, working on a couple of options after you complete your jump stop on how to finish floater, left hand, right hand. And then in the game, all of a sudden, like getting into a jump stop and just making a decision without thinking about it because you had worked on it so much. So
Got it.
it was like brick by brick. You know,
Mm.
it's just like all of a sudden one day I'm like, oh man, I like coming to a jump stop and jumping left, jumping sideways and avoiding a charge and finishing on somebody, right? As opposed to always trying to like just jump as high as I can and jump over everyone.
Punch it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, it just was so incremental. And you don't really realize that you're improving that much until all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh wow, my left feels really good. Like I'm going left more than I go right now, or
Hmm.
my shooting percentage just slowly ticks up. So, the big turning points were playing against those guys in Oakland more than I played with the guys in Alameda, more than the guys
Hmm.
at the school, which also
Hmm.
might have been something that was like upsetting to the school staff. Was that like,
Um,
I was in Oakland
you
every
just
day.
dip.
Yeah. And but I was on JV. So for me, it was like it wasn't like I was missing practice or anything. I would do my practices, but I would do all my work, my personal work with those guys.
Right.
So the combo of working out and hooping with such talented players, then doing the drill work, and then also, now being 16, 17 years old versus me at 13 was probably a huge difference.
6'5", $170.
6'5", $170, all muscle.
Uh,
I graduated high school 6'5", 175, which is crazy. So
something like.
yeah, but I felt strong out there, man, and I
Yeah.
was not shying away from contact, especially my junior year. And there were just these moments where it was clicking, man. We would play against O'Dowd, who had Johnny Bryant, who's now coach of the Knicks, like big time, really, really great player, respected player, and drop 16, as a junior against
Hmm.
one of the better teams.
Those are your
Um,
rivals, right? No doubt.
yeah, those are our rivals. They weren't in our league for many years, so but still, huge rivalry going way back
Hmm.
to the Ray Young days, J Kid days. Um, Trying to think of like other big games where it started to click. We went to a preseason tournament down in San Diego, and I remember like we called an out of bounds play for another guard, and once we got out there and lined up, the guard was like, "Yo, you take it," and things like, and then I like got it and hit it. Um, you know, Tight games in the fourth, and all of a sudden, like guys kind of like finding me with the ball and then like getting out the way a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess they want me to take it, and just it
Yeah.
was like these little moments of like, I feel like I'm kind of becoming the go-to guy, and I feel like I like that. I feel like I want that to be the case.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, yeah.
When does the recruiting start to happen?
Man, so that's another crazy thing is that I was playing with the Oakland Rebels and we were getting a lot of exposure before I was on varsity at my school. So I
Mm.
started getting college letters as a sophomore,
Playing JV.
if I remember correctly, playing JV.
Wow.
So I think that also irks some people. Gordy's like walking into my classroom delivering letters for a guy that like he hasn't even coached yet. So I think that might have been annoying for some people. There's other seniors at the school like watching me get letters from D1 schools and stuff like that. But that was never anything I like bragged about. I was genuinely happy about it. I was really excited. And it also strengthened the idea that I should try to play as much as I can AAU, especially since no college coaches are coming to JV games.
Right.
So I was glad that happened. And I started getting letters, which is different than getting recruited, but getting letters sophomore year. And then that summer between sophomore and junior year, I remember for some of our tournaments, coaches being there. And that was a benefit of playing with guys like Q and Tim and who else was on our team more consistently? Justin Argonal was already varsity at De La Salle and playing great. Was that college coaches would come to see these guys on my team, and then I would have a big game, and maybe all of a sudden, out of every five, one of them's now trying to recruit me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome. And I just remember kind of feeling like it was great for me too, because obviously it's a blow to your confidence when you think you should be playing varsity and you're not. But then it's like a confirmation when you're in this tournament with like all D1 guards on the court, all nationally recruited, and you're playing well, if not better. So then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, wait, I know I'm nice, so it's not my fault,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then going into your senior year, another head coaching change?
Yeah. So this was the big one because we too, as juniors in school, were going into our senior year.
Right.
And so Coach Horton replaced Coach Johnson kind of last minute. And it was like announced pretty much that, okay, you're going to finish the year out, but it wasn't announced that he was like the new coach. He was really like stepping into the shoes. So we, what we would call now an interim head coach for my junior year. So senior year, they had gone out and gotten this star-studded, coach named Don Lippy from St. Ignatius in San Francisco. And so I didn't know, I had a couple of teammates from AAU that had played for him. And I went to him, I was like, yo, what's the deal with this Coach Lippy guy? And they were like, oh man, he's wild, dude. You should be careful. He's just a really tough, hard coach. And you should maybe consider playing at another school if it's your last year, because he could be really tough. I was like, oh my gosh, right? So we were like dragging our feet, like, oh man, don't tell me my last year, like we're gonna get a coach that's just like, out of control and blah, blah, blah. So we were really upset by his arrival in the beginning, just because the coach that we knew and were close to was leaving, and it was our last
Hmm.
year. But it turned out to be one of the best things ever, man. And he came in right away. And whatever happened at the old school, that was not the coach that we got to know. He was, super forthright, very intelligent, highly motivated, incredibly energetic. And it was apparent pretty quickly that we were going to have a good year.
Talk to me about your senior year. What do you
That
remember?
senior year was great, man. So,
What was his
where to
coaching style
begin?
like different? So versus the Coach Horton previously.
Yeah, in so many ways, man. I mean, the biggest one, I always say that because Coach Horton was our PE teacher, but Coach Lippy was like a school teacher. I think he taught government and maybe history or something like that.
Hmm.
But there's something about playing for a teacher, right? Like they're not. There's the coaches that kind of give the orders, like, yo, get on the line, like, yo, we're running 2-3, you need to be here. They're like
Hmm.
motivators with the stick. um, Coach is much more the care. He's like, look, the reason we're doing this is because of this, and they have this type of offense. So if we can manage to handle this way, boom, boom, boom. And so you understood not just like what you were doing, but why, the
Hmm.
philosophy behind it. Then he also seemed to pay as much attention to the team's chemistry and camaraderie as he did to the team's performance on the court, which I had never experienced from a coach prior to that. An example is, before every single game my senior year, coach set it up so that we had to go to a player's home and meet his family and have a team dinner all together with that player, the family, and all of us, and then ride, to the games together after having that experience. So in the beginning, you can imagine that being super strange, but like just think about every single week. I might have gone to school for 2 or 3 years with some of these guys, and never been to their house, don't really know their family, their upbringing, their background that well, right?
Right.
Just friends with everybody on the team. To now, I know your whole family, I know your siblings, we've sat and broken bread, I know what meals you like. And naturally, I just care more about you as a human on my team, as opposed to just like this dude that missed that shot or whatever.
Right. 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 Right.
Uh, and then he put in these little team rules, like if you come to school and you've got a big lunch and your teammate doesn't have anything, you better share with them. If you've got
Just
$4
principles.
for $2 snack, you better be buying one for you and one for your teammate. If your teammate on the team is a little bit hot-headed and you see him getting into it out on the yard, like, you better go get him because
Mm.
that's your teammate. Like
Right.
he basically, like, treat your teammates like they're your brothers and your family. And those are things you would do for your brothers in a heartbeat without question, right? So
Hmm.
why wouldn't you do it for a teammate? And naturally, after week after week after week, what happened was I really felt like these were my brothers, not my teammates. And so I don't want my brothers to have to run another line because I didn't make the time sprint. I don't want
Right.
my brothers to lose a game. I don't want my brothers to not experience the joy of a championship, right? Like I don't scream or yell at my brother in the same way I encourage him and uplift him. So that was brilliant, man. That's like a masterstroke for 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to be like
Right.
conducting themselves that way. Was a huge advantage on the court, during tough games, etc. And the way we spoke to each other, the way we encouraged each other, joked around. Now we spend all our free time together, essentially. We were a really, really strong unit.
And it
Um,
showed in the stats, right?
Showing the
How did
stats, man. We
how
so
did your how did your guys' senior year end?
Yeah, so first I'll talk about how it started was we felt like so the school now was they changed divisions. So now you had to play schools based on your school size, right? You couldn't
Hmm.
just because you had a good team, you couldn't play Division 1. You had to, Division 1 schools got some 15,000 students, 20,000 students or something like that. Maybe that's 10,000 students. And then, our school had 500, little over 500 students total. So we had to play Division 4 out of 5. And when that happened, we were like, oh man, there's like, we have to win state. There's no excuse now because we felt like of all the schools of this size, we're the best. And we didn't even know that for a fact. We just felt that way.
Right.
So we had our eyes on the state chip from the jump. And then when we started off the season, we actually started off struggling. We started off 8-6 through our first 14 games. And I was playing shooting guard and I was averaging 31 points a game through the first 14 games. I was just playing out of my mind. But we were losing to teams we shouldn't be losing to, especially if we think we're going to win state championship. So Coach Lippy actually made the switch and said, look, you're a scorer, you can put the ball in the bucket, but no one else is getting as many touches. We're having trouble breaking the press. Our point guard is a lights out shooter, but he's having a tough time even finding his shot because he's trying so hard to break these double teams or what have you. I think we should put you at the point guard and move so and so. And so he's like, your numbers are going to go down. Now I'm asking you to orchestrate the offense. I'm asking you to get people involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, not just score. And, my attitude was like, man, everything he just said made a lot of sense. So I'm like, hey, whatever you need, if you think this will help us win, let's get it. And man, we did that. We made that change. My scoring average went down by 10 points. I started averaging just over 20 instead of just over 30. And but it worked. Assists went up, rebounds went up, all of our other key players' numbers went up, and we rattled off 21 wins in a row, man, and won a state
Wow.
championship. 21 wins
That's
in a row. So that was something special. That was like at that time one of the longer winning streaks I think the school had had. And we made it to the state chipper. We played against Verbum Day in Arco Arena, which is where the Sacramento Kings used to play before the new arena was built.
hmm
My first time on an NBA court playing a game, and in front of just everybody, family, friends, everyone got to compete for that state title and got to win it. So that year was just amazing. One of the best years of my life, hands down. And it's a real sign of like not judging a book by its cover because of
Right.
the arrival of coach for us was such a negative thing, and admit that we were losing the coach we were close to. It turned out to be maybe one of the most instrumental and influential things that ever happened to me in my life to this day.
And it comes full circle, right? Because just a couple weeks ago, you were back at St. Joe's. Do you want to talk about that experience?
Yeah, I think we should talk about it even more uh, after April once the ceremony happens. But yeah, I just found out that I'll be inducted into St. Joe's Hall of Fame, and so that's just unreal, Only like 75 years after I attended, but whatever, late is never. But
That's
yeah, I
amazing.
just got word that I, will be inducted into the Hall of Fame for St. Joseph Notre Dame High School this year. Got to go back on campus and just kind of relive some of the old steps, give an interview and share some of my thoughts on it. And end of April, we'll have a ceremonial dinner and the official induction ceremony. So I'm thrilled, man, because it's just
That's awesome.
it's a testament, man. In our Hall of Fame are the likes of Jason Kidd, who's Jason Kidd. If you don't know who he is, you probably wouldn't even be watching this show this long. Some just incredible names, state championships, and just really, really like people that I looked up to and admired throughout my whole childhood. And
hmm
I can't say how many times I walked through the hall and was just like, gosh, these are legends, or saw banners hanging up in the ceiling and just like felt like I wish I could be them, but I don't know if that's even a realistic expectation. And just I'm really grateful to be honored in this way, and I know that it'll be an emotional day when I get to go experience that.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna I think we should record it and throw it on the
Sure.
channel.
For sure.
And I think that's a great place to end. That's kind of chapter one in terms of the upbringing.
Absolutely,
that
man.
flew by. So here it is, man.
Yes,
That's
sir,
Al.
man.
I'm Sam. We talking Swish.
We'll be back.